Welcome everyone, this is Sue Lester and this is part of your Personal Power series, It's Okay to Say No. So a big welcome to people who have made it despite the time difference and the time zones, and also welcome to those of you who had other commitments and are listening to the recording. Congratulations on making time for you. Now in the session today I've allocated an hour. Might take more or less time depending on what questions people ask as we go along. And I'll certainly be addressing the answers that you gave me to the questions in your registration form. So thank you very much for doing that. It helps me ensure that I'm on track and helping you in the way that you need help most. So in the session we're looking at some common beliefs around saying no, the sources of those beliefs, and some practical steps to make changes. So there's lots of information, so please make notes as we go along. Ask questions as we go along, because you can bet if the question's in your mind, it'll be in someone else's mind as well. So to do that, all you need to do is either click on the little hand icon so I can unmute you and you can ask the question live, or you can type in the question box. Bearing in mind that I'm really focused on what I'm doing, so I might not see you straight away, but absolutely I'll be checking in every so often to see if there's any questions that need attending to. This is being recorded, so just be aware of that. So if you do come on live, I'll only use your first name. What else do we need to do? Okay, so chugging along, off we go. And it helps if I bring my keyboard back so I've got the control panels. So this is all about you. So put up your do not bug me sign. Get rid of all those distractions. This is not a time for you to be multitasking. This is a time for you. Multitasking means you're doing things for other people. So just for this short period of time, out of this day, out of your whole life, make it about you. And remember too that those questions that are going through your heads, they're not silly. In fact, the only silly, in my opinion, the only silly question is the one that goes through your head that you don't actually ask. Because what if someone judges you? This is a safe place. I'm certainly not judging you. I would much rather you spoke up, we cleared the air, you can get a shift, get that answer you need to then move forward in your life with a smile on your face. Now all of the content from today's session, in fact from my whole Personal Power series, and if you've been following the webinars over the last 12, 18 months, there's quite a few now. And I'll continue to do them whenever time permits in amongst speaking gigs and working with clients and all the other commitments that are on the boil at the moment. Now, and to make it easier, to make it more accessible, I've packaged it all up and put it in my recently published book, The Face Within, How to Change Your Unconscious Blueprint. It's your DIY head trash clearing kit. And DIY means do it yourself, which might sound obvious, but some people didn't understand what that meant, so I'll just clarify that. It's designed for you, basically. If you're busy, overstretched, overcommitted, it's easy to read, easy to apply. I've had quite a few people say, I've bought your book. It looks great. And it's there beside my bed, just waiting for that time when I can sit down and work through it slowly, do all the exercises. Now, you and I know that that time doesn't always necessarily come. It's also designed that you can just pick it up, open up at any page, read a little paragraph, a key point, a quote, and you'll get what you need in that moment. So please use it in that way as well. And yes, of course, I'd love for you to start at the beginning and do absolutely all the exercises and apply the techniques and totally transform your life all by yourself. But we're real people, so the intention's there, doesn't always happen in reality. But just know it's a resource for you to use whenever you need it. And I welcome any feedback as you go along. Any questions, feel free to email me, info@growingcontent.com.au. So at the moment it's available in printed form and on PDF, and I'm negotiating at the moment for overseas distribution, print on demand and ebooks. That's all happening. And the audio version and the companion workbook are also in production. However, don't wait for that. Buy the book now, get yourself started, and then when the other products come out, you can always buy them as a gift. Just make sure you give them to someone who's happy to share them with you. which might sound a bit wicked, but you know what I mean. Okay, so a little bit about me so you know who you're talking to. I noticed quite a few familiar names in the registration list, and some I didn't know. So, so extra welcome to you. I'm basically, I don't know, an adventurer with a passion for clearing head trash. I guess that sums me up. So head transition coach, so I work as a coach, a speaker, an author, workshop facilitator, trainer. And on the screen, if you can see it, there's some snaps of me doing various things around the world, high ropes courses and through walking with a pack on my back, exploring Prague in the snow, speaking to small, medium, large groups, sea kayaking, doing an aerial flight over a live volcano. So lots of things. I just love adventure travel. It's basically what makes my heart sing. As well as working with you, of course. That's my two passions, clearing head trash and making my own heart sing through adventurous travel. Now, to get to this point, I had to learn how to say no. I had to learn how to say no to unwanted children. In that, at that time in my life, it wasn't right for me to have children. I had to say no to an abusive relationship. In fact, basically, I had to learn to start saying yes to myself and valuing myself. And of course, it's scary. It takes a whole shift in how you view yourself to be able to do that. And that's what we'll be exploring this session today. Because I was at this point, and from your comments, from your registration feedback, it seems like quite a few of you are in the same place. You're saying things like, well, I wish I could say no, but I can't because, and then it's basically because of the C word. Now, some of you may have different interpretations on the C word, but this is more what I mean. Because really, you can physically say no. Like, you know, that word, no, of course you can say it. So telling yourself that you can't say it is basically lying to yourself, and it's also a form of negative self-programming. Also, saying you can't. Well, yes, you could. But the reason you don't is because of the consequences. So you're telling yourself stories saying, well, you know, it'd be nice there up in dream world that I could say no and everything would be happy. Or telling yourself that no, you possibly can't. But you can. It's just the consequences that are stopping you. And it depends too. Sometimes those consequences are very real. If you're in an abusive relationship, saying no can actually result in bruises, broken bones, all sorts of horrible things. But most of us are in the imagined consequences. In terms of you imagine what people are going to say or do, and it's very rarely positive. You notice that? When you go out and do the what-ifs, it seems to be common human nature that we paint the negative what-ifs. So we imagine them giving us a cold shoulder, telling us we're bad, terrible people, no longer being friends, removing their love, their support from us, telling other people about us. All of the different consequences. So that's the first significant point. Just be aware when you're telling yourself stories, is it real or is it just imagined? Is it things that are playing up in your head? If there are real consequences, as in physical damage, you seriously need to get help from a professional. Link in, call the domestic violence support line, get yourself some support, because he's not going to change and you're endangering yourself and possibly your children as well. So get yourself out of there, get yourself some help to get out of there as soon as possible. So some of the stories we tell ourselves, oh, well, if I don't do it, who else would do it? Now the answer to that is someone. Someone will. Now, that someone might be your sibling, it might be a friend, a colleague, your partner, your children. It might be government services. It might be a charitable organisation. So it's not necessarily an alternative that you might feel good about or desire, but trust me, if you drop dead, someone else would do it. So that's to remind yourself that you're not indispensable, you're not irreplaceable. And sometimes the very person that actually needs to do it is the person themselves. They need to step up and grow up. Now, this is where the unconscious blueprint comes very much into play. And that's what I mentioned in my book, and it's basically your internal image that you hold of yourself. But you also have an unconscious blueprint of other people, and they can be empowering or disempowering to both yourself and to others. So, for example, if you're working with someone that you don't respect, you might have a very disempowering image of them, and it's disempowering to them. If, on the other hand, you're afraid of them, feel inferior, well then your internal image of them is disempowering you. So instead of seeing them as a peer, you're seeing them either below or above you. Neither is helpful for healthy relationships. And likewise, for example, if you have issues with your children, whether they're children or whether they're adults, often you can have an unconscious blueprint of each of your children, which is of them as much younger. So you might have an image of them as little children, as opposed to the teenagers or young adults they are. So what happens then, even though your eyes see the young adult, your crew, and I'll come back and explain this more, you're at the unconscious level, you see them as that child. And so your default response, your default way of managing the relationship is treating them as that 6-year-old, which of course is very disempowering. And the thing is, you can do that and then you get cross with them because they're not stepping up and doing the things you expect of someone of their age. So it's a really mixed message, and so no wonder teenagers throw up their hands in disgust and go, well, whatever. And we can end up rescuing people who actually need to step up, do it themselves, get themselves empowered, moving forward in their own lives, rather than expecting other people to do it for them. Because you might be saying, well, but it's my duty. Okay, according to whom? Now, is this a story you've brought through from your childhood, perhaps? That this is how daughters behave. This is how mothers behave. Sacrificing yourself for others. So when you think back over your childhood, what messages, what lessons did you learn along the way? And are they showing up in this particular situation that you're thinking of now? Having said that, if duty is a really strong value of yours, you get immense satisfaction out of feeling that it's your duty and fulfilling that duty well, in that case, that's absolutely fine. Just enjoy it. Let go of all that other nonsense about having to do it. If it's your duty, you love doing it, you get a real sense of pride and achievement out of doing it, get rid of the negative self-talk and just accept that, enjoy it, make the most of it. Once again, check in whether the degree that you're doing your duties, that you're not disempowering. Even with elderly people, if you do too much for them, they can then lose the ability to look after themselves. Their mental faculties fade very quickly. If they're not moving around, like if you're running around doing things for them, they're not actually moving physically, everything just freezes up and starts deteriorating at an even faster level. So be aware that you're not helping too much in your desire to do your duty. Another consequence, well, they won't like it if I say no. So there can be a lot of fear around that. And of course, some people won't like it if you say no because it's terribly inconvenient. They had it all mapped out. They were going out in the future doing the what-ifs and sorting out and slotting you as their rescuer or their fill-in person or whatever. And for you to say no, well, that's terribly inconvenient. Depends on the person. And some will be vocal about that, some a little bit resentful. But so many more will actually go, oh, well, I actually really didn't think you would because I know how busy you are. Just thought I'd ask anyway. So keep that in mind. People don't necessarily expect you to say yes. They're just asking a question. And questions can have a yes or a no answer. And that's perfectly fine. If someone asks you a question and they are expecting the answer yes and no other answer, well then it's not really a question, is it? It's more like a command or a demand. So remember that point too. If it's a question, you're entitled to say no. And it also comes down to whose opinion's more important, theirs or yours, which then comes back to your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself and your place in the world, which comes back down to what's your unconscious blueprint of yourself. Like at that deeper level, are you running off a disempowering unconscious blueprint? More about that in a sec. All right, you might have grown up with this one. Nice people don't say no or no or no. And look at that little girl. She's trying very hard to smile for the camera because she's been told to, but her little eyes aren't smiling. And the trouble with nice people, when you think about what a nice person is, they're happy, they're generous, they're loving, they're kind. Now, you saying no, or you saying yes when every fiber of your body is saying no, doesn't make you a nice person. If you're then resentful, irritable, you get frustrated, and you're not doing it because you have to do it rather than because you want to do it. You're much better to say no. Not this time, or I'm sorry, I've got other commitments. No, perhaps Fred or Mary or Janet would be able to help you. No, I can't do it, but I know someone who can. And it's also too about not allowing others to behave poorly. Because if you're saying yes when you mean no, you're actually bringing out the worst in yourself. And you're lying, which is not something that nice people do. So you get it from all directions, don't you? What if they don't like you? Well, that fear of rejection is quite strong and understandable, particularly if your self-confidence and self-esteem doesn't match your chronological age. Now, the thing is, if they're the sort of people who are not going to like you because you say no when they've asked you the question, and asked you the question and given you a choice of yes or no, well, are they the sort of people you want to hang around with? And that applies to whether they're family or not. Just because people are family doesn't mean you have to like them, doesn't mean you have to love them, doesn't mean you have to allow them to run your life for you. And the thing is, if you're a yes person, chances are, and you may have noticed this, you don't get the respect that you possibly would like. You get taken for granted and you become one of those doormats. And frankly, people don't particularly like or respect doormats. They're not someone they want to hang around with. You know, let's invite the doormat out to the restaurant. They're always fun. No, it's more like, let's get the doormat to look after the kids, feed the pets, do whatever. So your fear of rejection is actually a block between you and potential friendships. You're not on an equal platform. You're putting yourself below them, saying, here I am, wipe my feet on me, I don't mind. And then you get hurt when they don't make you their best friend or they don't treat you with the same level of respect as you'd like. This one's very common, and it takes I'm sure you can remember lots of situations from your childhood, your schoolyard days, where the pecking orders shifts and changes, and particularly girls can be so bitchy at school. And the thing is, if your unconscious blueprint is of a young child, primary school age or young teenager, then this one will be quite strong for you. And what happens is that you can then get locked into toxic friendships. And toxic friendships are the ones where you feel like it's one-sided. You're giving, 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 and they're demanding, demanding, demanding. When it's your turn, they're suddenly busy, suddenly not available, just not around. It's all about them, never about you. They're the ones, you'll know you're in a toxic friendship if when you're feeling a bit unwell, a bit down, a bit low in energy, the thought of seeing them is just like, oh. And that's because they take more energy than they give back. Energy vampires is another one, another name for them. And they also fit into this category. One of the consequences, they'll think and say horrible things about me. And maybe they will, but I suspect mostly in your imagination. Because after that first inconvenience, they'll get over it. They'll move on, get someone else to do their work for them, or maybe even step up and do it themselves. And if they're the sort of people that would do and say things, spread nasty gossip or vicious things about you, are they someone that you actually want in your life anyway? And once again, whether they're a relative or not. But just check in when you're thinking this, well, I can't say no because they'll think and say horrible things about me. Ask yourself, well, how do I know that for sure? Or is it just a story I'm telling myself? What percentage of the time is it actually true? Because that's the thing, we think we're important in other people's lives, but really we're not, for most people. Here's another one. Saying no is selfish. Well, yes and no. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Thing is, for you to serve others, and that's part of our purpose on life, in my view, it's about, and I better clarify that, when I'm talking about serving others as being part of our purpose, serving others through being the very best you can be, the very best me I can be. And the thing is, you can't do that if you're not filling your own well first. You've heard that saying before, haven't you? Have you ever seen what's at the bottom of an almost empty well? It's disgusting. There's putrid smelling mud and muck and decaying dead things. Horrible. No use to you, certainly no use to anyone else. So fill your own well, fulfill your own needs, get yourself in great shape, mentally and physically and spiritually. Fit your own oxygen mask first, in other words, so then you're in a better place to help others even more. There's no point saying yes if you've got that resentment smoldering inside, you're frustrated, you're irritated, and you become this horrible person. And the reason you do that is because you're actually punishing them. You're punishing them for them making you say yes, whereas really you're actually punishing yourself, because by not saying no, you're being mean to yourself, you've got all this tension and irritation and horrible feelings in your body, you're resentful, you're making yourself sick and miserable. All they did was ask a question. You had a choice to say yes or no. And the thing is, when you're saying yes to others, you're actually saying no to yourself. And something else to keep in mind, what sort of role model are you being to other people, particularly to your children, other people in your life? Because your children will look at you and they'll model off you. And if you find that you're being treated disrespectfully or treated as a doormat by your children, well, that's the modeling you've allowed them to do. They've obviously seen other people do that to you, and you've allowed it. So they either follow suit and become little doormats themselves, or they will become the foot wipers. And neither is something that you honestly want for your children, let alone yourself. Here's another one. I'm weak. I'm just a weak person. Woe is me. Now the thing is, self-talk is all about self-programming. So I actually got that sketch of a bull there because that's the first thing that comes to mind. But it's actually true. If you keep telling yourself you're weak, well, you're absolutely right. Because as long as you keep telling yourself you're weak, you will be. And then you can say, yep, that's who I am, always was, always will be, I'm just weak. And then you can feel sad for yourself and allow other people to wipe their feet on you once again. And chances are inside you've built up this beautiful unconscious blueprint of yourself as a weak person. But the thing is, you're as strong as anyone else. It's just a matter of whether you believe that and believe in yourself, value yourself enough to claw your way back, step into your personal power, and actually live to your potential. And we'll come back to those points in a moment too. And this one, they caught me by surprise. I didn't know what to say, so I said yes. Okay, rule of thumb. Whenever you're caught by surprise, the first answer you say is no. Not like that. You're a nice person. So you say things like, well, I have to say no at the moment because you've caught me by surprise, because I'd hate to say yes and then have to let you down. Let me check in my diary, check with Fred, check my commitments, whatever. And if I can say yes, I'll let you know. But for the moment, it has to be no. And that's it. End of story. Change the subject. Some people will try and bully you, but really it has to be no until you're absolutely sure you can say yes, because otherwise you might let them down and you don't want to do that. So you come from that perspective, you're actually helping them and being considerate of them by saying no. Because frankly, whose life is it? Are you putting someone else's family in front of yours? Someone else's needs and values in front of yours? It's your life. So you're actually allowed to say no to people and yes to yourself. Because what happens is every time you've got to ask that question, you've got a choice. You can say no to your life path and yes to theirs, or the other way around. Because every time you say no, every time you say yes to someone, when really you want to say no, you're actually stepping off your path, your journey, to follow someone else's path. And if you're not careful, you can end up on a really long detour, and it can take years for you to get back onto your own path. And that's why it's really important that you have that clarity of who you are, where you want to go, what you want your life to be right now as well as in the future. And clear at that deepest level all those blocks and fears and doubts that are stopping you from having the confidence to actually say no. This is my path. This is the way I'm going. Now, I'm talking about this unconscious blueprint. I've mentioned briefly, but if I use this explanation, it might make it clearer for you, for those of you who aren't familiar with it yet. We've got a conscious mind, which uses about 3 to 10% of our brain capacity, depending on what research you read. I call that your captain. Your captain on board your ship of life. Below deck, you've got your unconscious or subconscious mind, which is about 90 to 95% of your brain capacity. I call them your crew. They're running the show in the engine room, keeping things ticking over. They're the ones that make you blink and grow your skin and keep your heart beating. You don't have to consciously remind them to do things. It just happens at that unconscious level. And then the map that the crew are navigating your life ship off, that's what I call your unconscious blueprint. So in those examples I mentioned before with people I've worked with, and it's surprisingly common. If you've got an unconscious blueprint of a 14-year-old, for example, and you're actually 40, Well, you can imagine there's quite a bit of difference. Your crew are navigating, making decisions, choices based on that out-of-date map and missing all the experience of those extra years. And that's what's so important, to identify it, update it, which can be done quite quickly. In fact, some people are quite shocked by what they discover when they look at their unconscious blueprint, either of themselves or of other people. If you've got relationship problems with your partner, it'd be interesting to see what your unconscious blueprint of him or her is. Do you see him as that daggy teenager that's just irritating? You just want to pull his pants up and give him a good scrub and a good feed and send him off to bed. Is it that you see your adult children as little children? Are you seeing yourself as fat and frumpy, or a pimply little teenager? Or the youngest example I've had was unconscious blueprint of a 4-year-old. And that particular client was 23 at the time. But 4 was the last time she'd actually felt safe. She had one of those horrendous childhoods, like the textbook child abuse stories. And it was amazing that she's just amazing she survived, actually. But also she's such a good-hearted, strong person inside that once we updated her and got her back on track, she just started flying. And as I mentioned before, the book, it explains, I've got lots of case studies in there. I explain how I actually first discovered the existence of the unconscious blueprint. Lots of interesting stories, case studies, plus I explain how you can actually identify, and then later in the book, how to update your own unconscious blueprint of yourself and others. And yes, of course, that's a service I offer, but it is possible to get the book and work through it yourself if you need to, or if you wish. All right, so I'm also all about personal power, and without personal power, there's no way you're ever going to be able to say no. Now, I've shown this or something similar to it in other webinars. Some of you might be very familiar with it, some of you not. Those of you who think you're familiar with it, have a moment to think, are you applying it in your life? Because if you're not, it's time to just revisit it and just check in. Which end of the continuum are you at? Are you at the powerless side or are you powerful? If you have trouble saying no, those moments, and I'm not talking about your whole life, but those moments where you tell yourself that you can't say no, you're very much at the affector powerless side. Because when you're over the other side, the powerful at cause side, you know that you actually have a right to say no. And you're more than comfortable taking full responsibility for that decision, for the thoughts, the feelings, the meaning, the action you give to things. You know that if you've delivered your message with the best intentions, in the best possible way, it's not your responsibility if someone else chooses to take offense at that or get upset or get angry. That's their stuff. You're coming from a place of being calm, confident, centered, knowing and liking who you are, clear sense of direction and faith in your ability to get there. So you're interested in results, not in reasons and excuses why things didn't work. You're interested in results. And we always get results, just a matter whether you like them or not. So when you get results you don't like, you look, okay, what can I do differently next time? Timing, place, words, tone, body language. What do I have to change so next time I get the results I want? And the key to personal power is being in the present. This is the only moment that's real. Right here, right now is real. A moment ago exists only in your imagination. In a moment's time, that's only in your imagination as well. You know, we're great time travelers. You know what? I love Doctor Who. And when I was little, I used to love watching it too. Time TARDIS, wow. But you know, we actually travel in time all the time. Every day, we're doing it. We go back to the past, we explore things. Sometimes we pick up a bit of the past and we bring it back into the present, or we might take it out into the future, plan a bit of past out in the future. So next time, so it's there so we can trip over it again. Every time you do a what if, You're time traveling. You're going out into the future. And it's up to you what sort of future, where you go, whether you're going to a pleasant future or whether you're opening the door of the TARDIS and it's a disaster zone. Now, I'm not saying that every time you go in the future it has to be totally rosy. It's very practical to go out in the future and just assess potential danger, things that may go wrong, but only from a perspective of then coming back to the present and working out, okay, what do I need to put in place now to ensure that if that does happen, I'm prepared? Or even better, what can I put in place now in the present to ensure that actually doesn't happen at all? So that's when going out and imagining a negative what if can be really powerful and empowering, because you're using it to find solutions, prepare yourself. If you go out in the future, tell yourself scary stories and come back to the present and shake and shiver because that horrible scary story is out there, well, you're just disempowering yourself. You're taking all the pleasure and meaning and heart out of your life. So the idea is that as much of the day in as many areas of your life, you're over on the right-hand side, living in your personal power. But we're human. So the idea is to be over there as much as possible, knowing that, you know, we're works in progress, we're all on a journey, none of us are perfect. So practice makes progress, never makes perfection. And frankly, if you're practicing the wrong thing or the wrong way, you won't even get progress. So keep that in mind too. But I guess the key point is you always have a choice. Always, always, always. Now you might tell yourself that you don't. And in fact, actually when I was trekking in Ladakh in northern India this time last year, it really hit home how much stress in our lives back in Australia is based on choice. So for some people there's so much choice. It's overwhelming because they know if you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to so many other things. And conversely, some people are so caught up in their stuff, their head trash, that they think they don't have any choices. So you always have a choice, at least two choices. You might not like either, which is then stressful. So then it's a matter of lifting your head, having a look around, getting some fresh air, going for a walk, looking for other solutions. Now the reason we might not like the choices or deny that they exist is because of the consequences. And we've gone through a few of those consequences. And sometimes we can tell ourselves a story that it's easier to stay in our pity pit or our abusive relationship, our mucky situation, rather than gather up all our courage and make a run for it. But you always have a choice. And you can't please everyone. Now that's something you would have been hearing over the years. You can't please everyone, so you should please yourself. Because no matter what you do, there'll be someone who disagrees. And there'll be just the same number of people that go, yay, good on you. But the only person in the middle is you. You're the linchpin of your life. So you need to be strong and steady. So those things people are revolving around you don't spin off kilter. Now, part of understanding why you think and feel and act the way you do is understanding that we're complex creatures and we all process all the information coming in through all our senses. And it's the way we process the senses, and that's what this diagram shows, that, you know, you've got all that stimulation coming through all your senses, the sights, the sounds, the ear, the smells, and it's how you interpret it, how you filter it through, that determines how you create your map of reality. I'm aware this is a new concept for some of you. But you actually, each one of us has our own reality. And you would have seen that when you walk into a restaurant with friends, for example. Some of you will notice the guys, some of you notice the music, some will notice the food, some will be looking for empty tables, some will notice what people are wearing. You all notice different things. And that's because you're just filtering for different things. But what you filter for, what you focus for, is basically what you get, and that's what creates your reality. But it's not all of reality, it's just your little map of it, which means it can be changed by adjusting what you're filtering for. And very much a lot of the work I do is about adjusting those filters so you can create and focus on a different piece of reality, one that's more empowering, one that gets you closer to your ideal your ideal life. Because how you see the world has enormous impact on your emotional state, which has impact on your physiology, behavior, and therefore your results. I don't want to go into too much of that. That's a whole webinar on its own right, and I'm sure I've got one recorded somewhere. So it's just, I guess the main point there is that no one has exactly the same reality as you. No one. Not even your soulmate. So it's being aware of that when someone is disagreeing with you, it's not necessarily that they're being difficult. It might simply they've got different values, they've got different memories, they've got a different map of the world to you. So you can stop being hurt when people don't buy you the gift on your birthday that they think you should. Stop being hurt that people don't act and say and think exactly the way you would. They can't. They're not you. So once you stop expecting people to act and say and do exactly what you would do, well then it frees you up to just get along without all the pain. And absolutely being in the present, not rehashing the past and then thinking, well, I did that before, then go out in the future and seeing them do it again and feeling the angst. That doesn't serve anyone, least of all yourself. So it's accepting that we're all different. And that's what makes us interesting. And that's all a matter of perspective. For 50 people who say that you're right, 50 people say that you're wrong. And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, including you. And the only person who really knows what's right for you is you. And you know, deep down inside you absolutely know. But it's because of the fear of the consequences that you perhaps aren't allowing yourself to recognize that and let that message out. And very much the work I do is helping people communicate, open up that communication channel between their captain and their crew, conscious and unconscious mind. So your thoughts and actions match, you get the results you want. That internal conflict stops. And then you've got that peace of mind, that calm, centered feeling. It's so much easier to say no to people when you're feeling calm and confident and centered. You're not concerned whether they may or may not think you're a terrible person. It doesn't matter. You know you're not. And part of that is being careful about who or what you compare yourself with. Particularly those of you who run your own business or thinking about getting on that. Actually, those of you who are mothers or fathers as well. It's no good comparing yourself with someone who's further along the journey than you are. So, for example, you're starting out in your business. Maybe you're getting into real estate investments. If you compare yourself with Donald Trump, you're going to feel pretty bad about yourself. If you're starting in the business, you're comparing yourself to Richard Branson, you'll feel pretty miserable about yourself because, wow, I'm not like him. Well, no, you're not. But he also isn't at the same stage as his business as you are. So by all means, look at people who have gone before you. As they say, stand on the shoulders of the giants that have come before you. You see so much further. Learn from them, model from them, but make sure it's at the same level you're at. Likewise, when you compare yourself maybe with other mothers you see around the school gates, some of them look like they've got it so together. And maybe they have. But maybe they haven't. They're just better actresses than you. And besides, how often do you put on the smiley face and say, yeah, everything's fine, we're all happy? So be careful who or what you're comparing yourself with. The important thing is that you measure your progress. And when you look back over your life, you've come a long way since you were in nappies. You've learned enormous amounts along the way. And some of them were hard lessons, and some of them were good lessons, but you've learnt along the way. So it's acknowledging your progress and encouraging yourself to just keep taking those steps more and more. Because if you don't, you basically just solidify. And there's an exercise that I do with coaching clients. It's called a wants versus needs analysis. And we look at the big picture, the big wants. You know, the big want, there's that big picture that, I just really want to be there, doing that thing, having that thing. But I'm back here. And you can feel really bad because it seems like that want is so far away. You're never going to get there. But really, underneath that want is a need. And we can identify that need. What is it? That big thing, what would that actually get for you? Once you identify that, then you can find ways on a day-to-day basis, other things that can fulfill that need. And by doing that, your whole journey is a positive experience. Not your whole journey. We're human, so there's ups and downs. But you bounce back and you spend more time on even keel than you do down in the pity pit. Because life is just one moment after another. That's all it is. So the more moments that you feel happy and good about yourself, the more of your life will be happier and the more of your life will feel like it's worth living. So back to the saying yes and saying no. Boundary setting, maintaining. The thing with boundaries is they're actually not real. They're just a construct of our own minds. So some of us know that when we get to a boundary, we can find ways over, under, through, around. Other people get to a boundary and they say things like, oh well, just wasn't meant to be. Or, well, that's just not who I am. Or maybe, our family's never been good at blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, the boundary isn't real. You're never going to come across a big brick wall along your path with a sign saying, stop, this is your boundary. It doesn't happen. So just know that those boundaries, your boundaries, are meant to be pushed out as far as you need to in as many areas of your life. And it's not about jumping out of your comfort zone. It's about pushing those boundaries out so your comfort zone is bigger. And yeah, it's a bit rough around the edges, a bit more excitement, a bit more adventure around those edges. But by pushing it out, it actually gives you more room to play. So you end up with a bigger comfort zone, which I think is a much nicer way of doing it. And much less stressful, much more fun. And if you're having fun, well, people are more likely to join you rather than to try and coerce you into enjoying their version of life. Now, having said that, for other people, the boundaries do need to be brick walls. If you say no, it needs to mean no. If you set a boundary and say no, and then you allow someone to pester you and pester you and pester you until you eventually say yes, all you're doing, apart from feeling horribly resentful, miserable, bad about yourself and about them, you're training them. You're training them that next time you say no, keep persisting and I'll eventually say yes, which is not the lesson you want to teach them. So no has to be no. Maybe use my 2-no rule from Nepal. The shopkeepers there, the Nepali shopkeepers, and this may have changed in the last couple of years, but it used to be a case of they had a price. If you asked nicely and if they liked the look of you, they would give you a second price, which was lower. And that was it. It's not the endless bartering, bargaining down like you find in India and Africa and other places. So more respectful. Gives you time to reconsider, gives someone a chance to put forward their case. But if the second no comes, well, that's fine. That's allowed. And that's something you can teach the kids too. So when you're setting boundaries, you need to be really clear on why you're saying no. So all the things that why it's important for you not to do that thing. And if you're really clear on your why, it's strengthening your wall, strengthening your boundary, because you're really clear on where your priorities are, what's important to you, how your time needs to be spent. And then the other part is to plan. So if you know, particularly in the early days when you were setting new boundaries, if you know something's coming up, you need to plan your response, your reasons, maybe get in first and tell the person that your other plans for that particular weekend. Now, when I'm talking about planning, I'm not talking about doing the scary what-ifs where you go out and paint the big scary picture. It's more about, okay, so I know she's going to ask me to do this. This is why I don't want to do it or can't do it or have other priorities at that time. This is how I'm going to approach it. And remembering, for the surprise attacks, answer is always no. Even if you think you'd love to do it, it has to be no, I'll just check. Just give yourself that bit of space so you don't find yourself overcommitting, particularly if you're someone who says yes to everything, because everything sounds exciting and fun to do. You can drive yourself into overwhelm doing that. Now, as you're planning this and while you're actually doing it, you want to be checking your body. Because if your body's tense, it means you're telling yourself stories. Like if your neck's shoulder is sore, you've got an ache and a pain in the back, you're not breathing as well as you should be, you're telling yourself scary stories at some level. Okay, so once you've got that awareness, you breathe in for a count of 3, out for a count of 6. That gets some oxygen through your system. Gives you a chance to think clearly, and by doing that, then you can have the reality check. Check in whether your fears, any of those consequences, how real are they, or are they just stories you're telling yourself? And if you think they're just stories that you're scaring yourself with, well, then you use the next 2 questions. You go out, well, you ask yourself, well, what if it doesn't happen like that? What if they say, oh, well, okay, just thought I'd ask. How will that feel? Because that first part of the question, what if it doesn't happen like that, gives you a chance there's a different reality that could be out there. And how will that feel? Will get rid of the tension out of your body, bring you back to neutral. And remembering your number 1 priority is the one you see in the mirror. Not that purpley blob that's there, you. Because once again, if you don't fulfill your own needs, fill your own well, you're no good to anyone else. That reminds me, there was a question about, well, how do you know the difference between what's selfish and what's healthy when you're doing what you love? All right. So there's always a balance. So absolutely. And it sounds like there's conflict maybe in the family, personal commitments there. Your purpose in life is to be the very best you can be. So that means being fulfilled in all areas of your life, being healthy, strong, and having enough resources to give back without depleting yourself. Having said that, if you made a commitment to be a wife or a mother, relationships need work and time and effort. They don't need slave labor, they don't need doormats, but they do need time. So there needs to be a balance that your passion doesn't overrun, or you don't lose those you love in the pursuit of your passion. So there needs to be ways to include them, or at least allocate the time so it's quality time. Needs are being met. So then that comes down to negotiation, discussion, and fulfilling their love languages. And if you haven't got a copy of my ebook, Win-Win Loving, you can jump online to my website, growingcontent.com.au, put your name and address in, and the system will send you a copy of that, because that helps you identify the best way to fulfill your loved one's needs, and also so you understand yourself. So it's actually more efficient, because it's, for example, there's no good cuddling someone who really needs you to talk with them. they're auditory people, you'll give them kinesthetic hugs. Likewise, saying I love you is not going to cut it with someone who's not auditory. Doesn't matter whether you say those words or not, they want to see you showing love. So it's worth getting that ebook. That will help things. It's your guide to creating even more harmonious relationships and workplaces. So, just looking at the time, and I can't see any questions that have come up. So, to sum up, 5 key points. Your head trash can be cleared at source by updating your unconscious blueprints of yourself and others. And that's crucial, because if you've got a disempowering unconscious blueprint, you can do as much work on yourself as you like. You're not going to get as far or fast as you need to. All right, until you start valuing yourself, no one else will. And frankly, no one respects a doormat. Not even you. Number 3, the only person you need to be is yourself. That's all. Yourself. You're allowed to be yourself. You're wonderful as you are, being you. The only person you can change is yourself. And knowing that changes you make yourself will have a ripple-on effect to other people. And your purpose in life, for those of you still looking for it, your purpose is just to be the very best you can be. So shining up your talents, your technique, you know, all the good things about yourself and sharing them with the world. That's all you need to do. That's your purpose, in my perspective. And to do that, you need clarity about who you are, where you're going, what's stopping you from getting there. You need the confidence to actually move ahead and do that. Getting rid of those self-doubts, the fears, the negative self-talk. And then you're freeing yourself up to be motivated to take action and do those things. And then this becomes an upward spiral. So this is what my Let Go and Go coaching program is based on. The 3 steps: clarity, confidence, and motivation. But it's a spiral going up. Because once you've achieved that point, well, then you get clear on, okay, so what's next? What else is possible? What can I do? Great. Okay, so what's blocking me there? Yep, clear that out of the way. Motivated, off you go. And then you reach up. So spiral, upward spiral. Because anything else is basically a pain in the neck. And life's too short to be in pain, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain. Depends how your body communicates with you. So, action time. If you haven't already got it, grab your copy of The Face Within, How to Change Your Unconscious Blueprint, and dive into that. If you've got it and it's sitting there gathering dust, please open it up. Any page will do. There'll be something there that you need to read. But of course, it's full of techniques and exercises for you to do and apply, which will make a difference, and also share with your loved ones. And to make it even easier for you to get started, I've got a 48 webinar bonus, because of course there's always a bonus at the end of a webinar. So if you book a 1-hour internal image update with me, and there's limited numbers of those because there's limited numbers of me. In that, we update your unconscious blueprint, plus identify other disempowering ones and update them. And we set you up, work out your next step forwards to achieving whatever it is you want in your life in terms of a bit more clarity and clearing about what's stopping you. That's $195. And by doing that, within the next 48 hours, you get a free gift voucher for a problem-dissolving session, 30-minute session, in which we use a really powerful process which dissolves your problems at that deepest unconscious level. You can use that voucher for yourself or give it away as a gift. And you can do that because you'll also receive an MP3 recording of that particular process. So you can dissolve your problems day after day yourself. So you can give the session away, keep the MP3 if you wish, because we will have already worked together, so you will have made your changes. So that free gift is worth $117 recommended retail price. So if you want to do that, SMS me 0428128679 or email me info@growingcontent.com.au and we'll get you booked in and take that sorted out. Any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I'll get this recording sorted and sent out to you so you can replay it, any bits you've missed. Any questions that I haven't already covered, please feel free to email me on that email address, info@growingcontent.com.au. And as always, I welcome your feedback and look forward to either seeing you or hearing from you soon. This is Sue Lester, your Head Transition Coach from Growing Content. Bye for now.